Hi everyone, I'm Sam Valenti. Welcome back to Backlot Pass, and today I have the amazing honor of being joined by an outstanding performer, voice actor, author, and coach, Melanie Chartoff. Melanie, how has the new year been treating you so far?
So far, so good. I got to travel the end of last year, take a nice brain break. So my brain is now hungry and eating a lot of different topics. So I'm feeling good about the new year. It was a crummy year for most people last year, and I think it's going to be a better year for us Americans, at least.
Yes, absolutely. Last year was quite the year, with the strikes and everything. I saw you were out there picketing, fighting the good fight. What was kind of that whole experience like throughout the strike during those months?
Well, we all light up for the camera, but it was a pretty grim year. And all of us walking the picket lines were very determined to hold out for the dignity of artists that we deserve. We are all hardworking, self propelling, studied, trained. It's not like we do this for a hobby. This is our career, our livings. And to have that put in jeopardy with these new systems, it's understandable that we have new systems like streaming and gosh darn, who knows what's going to happen with AI. And we're all just working it out. But we had to hold the line and say we need a piece of that pie for all the creative hard work that we do and all the input we contribute. So it was grim, but we all managed to have a good time. That's what artists do.
Now I'm telling you, all that AI stuff, it's crazy to me. It's just, it's honestly kind of scary. It's only getting more advanced by the day, it seems like. And it's just, you're hearing all this stuff about how AI is going to like take over and like it's going to take over like the background actors and the extras. It's just, it's ridiculous, I think. So I just, it's crazy.
Well, for background actors, it's especially perilous because they can do what they call tiling, which is they can take an actor in one costume or just in a green screen costume and replicate that actor repeatedly. So they can make a crowd scene out of just a couple of actors by tiling them, repeating their images in the millions. So those jobs are looking like they'll evaporate for economical reasons. It's going to be a very hard year for Screen Extras Guild.
Just before, we started recording and I thought it was cool to hear that they are working on a novel. And of course, we're going to get to Odd Woman out later in this. We'll of course be talking a lot about that. But so kind of what I don't want you to really spoil anything, of course, but kind of what is no what can you tell us about this novel that you're working on?
Well, it's a sci-fi comedy from a woman's perspective. The woman gets caught up in a terrible situation, a very humiliating and embarrassing situation. But then it turns out to save the world. So, a woman's body becomes a source of a new biofuel industry, and it. I can't really tell much more than that. You'd have to be reading what I'm writing right now. It's a wacko, bizarre idea. AI does play a very large part in it, and what I'm trying to do right now is just keep up with the endless evolution, exponential evolution of AI in week to week to make sure that my story is current. So I'm having to do a lot of research.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Gosh, I can't wait to read that. Yeah, I'll be one of the.
No, I can't
I'll
wait
tell you,
either.
that sounds intriguing.
Yes.
I think one of the best bits you did on Fridays was the parody of Cronkite's like final sign off you did. And I think that's what that, every time I watch it, it's so freaking funny. And I think it's just genius.
Well, we did a lot of cutting edge stuff on Fridays. A lot of it got us in trouble, and a lot of it was got us raves. So thank you. I didn't think you were old enough to have watched that show. You seem very young.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this, there's an amazing, the amazing thing about YouTube is that I think it's the closest thing that we have to almost like a time machine pretty much. It's this great
Right.
archive of stuff and honestly, I would rather watch shows like Fridays and stuff, like all these old shows than most of like the new stuff out these days, to be honest.
Oh, wow. That's very flattering. We're all, on behalf of us all, I will say thank you for that kind of attention. It's nice to know that young people are aware of what went on before.
Now kind of, I guess, staying kind of on this track, I kind of want to talk to you about some, different projects that you've done throughout the years, just a quick little trip down memory lane. And I want to start with this movie that you did, which I think is really cool. It's called American Hot Wax,
Oh yes,
where
yeah,
you portrayed a patience and prudence.
yeah.
Lots of people in this film. It has you, Jay Leno, Lorraine Newman, Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, and of course, Fran Drescher, who was, the president of SAG-AFTRA now. So,
Yes.
um,
And a lot
what
of
was,
wonderful singers and performers. They shoved us all in there. It was really a great showcase, actually. We all
yeah.
got we got to sing and we got to boogaloo, and it was just really fun.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So kind of what was it like, working on that movie and just getting to like work with just all these different people? It's pretty amazing. It's a pretty stacked cast, to be honest.
It was, but as you know, we're not all there all the time. They bring us in on different days to do our bits. So I don't want to make the situation seem unromantic, but I worked with Jay Leno and I worked with Denise Minnelli that day. I don't think I saw the whole rest of the cast. There was a cavalcade of, up and coming singers and artists, and they bring you in. They only have so much room in the trailer, so they just bring us in on different days. So a lot of people will often say, "Oh, what's it like knowing John Travolta?" As though we all hang around behind the TV screen together, and it's never right quite like that. There's not one big party going on. It's a million separate parties that get recorded individually.
I do think it's cool that Lorraine Newman is in this film because I've heard you kind of talk in interviews before about how you guys are really good friends. So I think that's awesome. And she's another one of my favorites too.
Oh, she's terrific.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Actually did excerpts of our one woman shows. We each did 1 hour of our one woman shows together and called it Half Baked because we were both doing half of our shows as a benefit to keep a theater in Santa Monica open. And it was very successful. It sold out and it was really great fun. And she lives near me. So, we see each other. We've worked together a great deal on various Zoom plays over the pandemic. Zoom plays have really taken up a lot of the artist's frustrations in the years that we couldn't actually go to the studio and work. So, yeah, she's terrific. She does a lot of animated voiceover work.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, wow, it's really cool about those Zoom plays like it's because I think I've seen like a couple of those kind of out there and stuff, and I think it's kind of really cool because during that pandemic when it first hit and stuff, it was I always thought it was interesting how people were still producing content and finding ways to do it like over things like Zoom, and I always thought that was just really awesome, kind of getting. And for you, kind of what was it like getting to be on those different sort of projects, trying to make things work during the uncertain time, of those years.
Well, it wasn't as great as being in the room uh,
Right.
with the others, but I got to work with people all over the country. I got to work with some of the cast members who are currently on Saturday Night Live. Actually, they were in the plays too. So we didn't actually meet, we just waved at each other, but we could say we sort of worked together. Um, and it was a great kind of saving grace during pandemic that we had Zoom. I socially felt so isolated, as most of us did. We couldn't hang with our buds, but I would have lawn distance luncheons where people would come to my lawn and I put out folding chairs and we would sit 10 feet apart and eat our lunches together. So these lawn distance visits really helped get me through so I could see my girlfriends and male friends and have some hang time, even though we couldn't hug and kiss.
When that all stuff happened, I was still trying to find ways to like still hang out with my friends and do stuff. So we would like meet over Zoom and play games, different things like that. So
It
I
definitely
can.
helped. Human beings are just amazing. Whenever they're stopped in one direction, they will innovate in another. So I got to hand it to us. We're pretty remarkable creatures.
So I read that you appeared on this soap opera back in the day. It was called Search for Tomorrow.
My
So
God, you searched all over to find that. Yes, I was still in college, I think. I lived on Long Island going to a school called Adelphi University. And the best thing about Adelphi, if you'll forgive me, it's a good school for tech theater. was that it was their train station was right on the campus. You could go right into New York and see what theater and television was really like. So I was able to audition while I was in college for some of the soaps and summer stock productions in New York. So I really started my career in college. So I got a kind of a drop on it. But Search for Tomorrow, I hardly remember. What did I do there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was because let's see, I think your character, I think I remember reading it. I think it was named like Nancy or something, but maybe I'm wrong there. But I think that's what I saw when it popped up. Um,
Was I a nurse or something?
yeah, yes, yeah,
Oh,
yes, you
yes.
were.
I remember that. There's so many things, Sam, that I've done that I just don't remember. Sometimes people send me pictures, and it's like, I feel like I must have amnesia because I had all these other lives that others remember more than I do because they happen to see a photo or a film or a credit. So thank you for bringing that to mind. I also did All My Children and One Life to Live when I moved to New York, which was in the early 70s. And it was really fun. And it got me my AFTRA card, American Federation of TV and Radio Artists. And from that, I soon was able to join SAG. Those two unions have now merged, but it was a big step to join the union. I was in Actors Equity, which was the theater union, but getting into the television radio artist union was a big coup.
Yeah, yes, for sure. Now what I think is cool is when I was looking at Search for Tomorrow, it's funny because 10 years after you did Search for Tomorrow, 10 years after you did that soap opera, you ended up doing a parody of the famous soap opera Dallas.
Right,
Was
right.
Fresno.
Oh, that was fun, and that was a show where we all got to hang out together. I got to hang out with Terry Garr and Carol Burnett, Dabney Coleman, Chuck Roden. It was a complete, and Billy Paxton, may he rest in peace. It was a fun shoot. We were just talking behind the scenes all the time, and then we'd have to go on and do a scene, and then we'd just go right back to hanging out together. The Love Boat was also like that. I was on the Love Boat, and there was a big crowd of stars who were hired to do the Love Boat back then. And we were all so eager to meet and talk that we'd forget we had to go on sometimes and, shoot our scenes. But yeah, Fresno was a real treat to be on. Unfortunately, they put a laugh track on it, which I think hurt it. In a way, they didn't think the audiences would get the subtlety of it. But apparently, they showed it without the laugh track in England, and they completely got it. They got the satire of it. So, in Fresno, a man is murdered by well, it's about a raisin factory, and a man is dehydrated and packed into a small raisin box and killed in that way. I mean, he's distributed as raisins. Um, I just thought being dehydrated and boxed in a raisin box was a great way to die. I thought it was very clever.
Yes, absolutely. And I was watching it, I was like kind of going through the show. It was like a couple days ago, and I think it was just so great how from the titles and just throughout the show you can see like these elements that were seen in shows, those primetime soaps like Dallas at the time, and just
Right.
kind of seeing all those different parts, and it's a really genius sort of
Very
show, and I wish it was more popular.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't get the ratings in America that it required, and they lost confidence in it. So they released it in England, where it didn't make a lot of money, but it was very popular for a while. I got to play a character called Desiree de Mornay, who was a really bad attorney for Billy Paxton, and she cared more about her wardrobe when she showed up in court than she did about being on time. I mean, she was just a real stock funny, vain, narcissistic character. It was really fun, and it kind of prepared me to do other things later.
Let's see, around that same time as kind of Fresno. This was like I think it's may have been just a little bit maybe just a little bit after that I think, but it was around that same time. You did a CBS sitcom that was called Take Five.
Oh yes,
Uh,
yes,
and you got to work with the late great George Siegel on this show.
I did.
But I was reading up on it, and apparently only two episodes aired. So why did the show have such a short lifespan?
I don't know. We shot six. And I was on Long Island reading the daily newspaper and found out we'd been canceled. I mean, I was shocked because I'd already bought all these clothes and was like getting ready for a long run. And I don't know why it happened. They only aired two. It didn't give us any chance to catch on. And I thought they made a mistake. But there are a lot of very expensive mistakes made in this business. It's politics, it's strategizing. That was one of those big disappointments.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I have to ask, what was it like working with George Siegel? He's, he's another one of my favorites. I loved him on the Goldbergs and stuff. I love that show. What was it like working with him?
Well, he was great fun to play with. Really get great being on camera with him. But off camera, he was very anxious. He was always making powdered soups or powdered coffee, or he seemed very anxious about doing a sitcom at that time when he'd had such a big film career. He was also newly married, and I think that was causing him some allotment of anxiety at the time. She would speak for him, and I think it unnerved the producers a little bit. So this is all I know. I just know that I had a great time with him on camera. We had great chemistry, but off camera, he was very nervous, very anxious.
In your book, you put that you did some sketches on this special with the Smothers Brothers, and then I was looking up George Siegel, and it turns out that he performed with the Smothers Brothers, and I just thought that connection was, kind of interesting.
Well, he played the banjo so beautifully, and I'm sure he collaborated musically with them. I didn't witness it, but I'm sure any opportunity he got to play his instrument, he was there. And Tommy and Dickie were guitarists, I believe, right? Exclusively, except for
Yeah.
the comedy parts. Yeah, so I find that easy to believe, actually.
Take Five was, that was kind of more of your traditional, multicam sitcom, with the live audience. But then of course you did Parker Lewis later, and that was, more of that the single cam, no the without live audience. I guess it would be a bit more akin to just like a movie almost. Is there like of those two kind of primary sitcom formats, is there one that maybe you prefer or something?
I prefer the single camera filming format. Um, I also love doing Parker Lewis. They were doing some very revolutionary things with the camera. Um, in fact, it set a kind of a course for lots of other movie comedy makers later. They would have a camera, a steady cam attached, like a GoPro, attached to an arrow and shoot it through the forest. And you would see the forest from the arrow's point of view until it plunked into a tree. I would open a refrigerator and they would shoot into my mouth and nose. And they'd black out that way. They did a lot of whipping of the camera where I would go like this and the camera would whip. And that was kind of a novel, innovative technique for camera moves. It was a very clever show. And when I read the script, it was written like an animated feature. Like I was exploding all the time, or my shoes were on fire, or smoke was coming out of my ears. And I thought, this is all special effects, just like a science fiction show. How are they going to shoot that? Well, they shot it 16 hours a day. It was an incredibly difficult schedule. Setting up the glass breaking in Miss Musso's window, setting up like the smoking the shoes, the hoses in my ears so that smoke would come out. These were very technically complicated setups. So each setup took like sometimes an hour and a half. And then you'd have to shoot it extra times to make sure that the effect worked. So it was very complicated to shoot, but I had a total blast. The boys on the show were so great, so talented, so much fun. And the scripts were very clever. And I had a great part. I loved playing the villain, Ms. Musso. She thought she was Eva Peron running a small South American country. Um, and she was just a high school principal. Poor thing.
Pretty innovative show, and just like like the way it was shot and stuff. What I really like is was when they'll do like these scenes that you're in, and the camera will do like this almost this cartoony sort of close up of you, and it's like your face is like taking up the entire shot. I don't know why I find that so funny.
Not always very flattering. I mean, they would really, it was like a fisheye lens. So the face would be distorted and and scary, but they wanted to make me scary. And for me, it was fun to play somebody scary, because I'm short and I'm small. And I needed a camera to do that for me because I'm not that imposing in real life.
Now, I kind of want to go back to Fridays for a little bit, just specifically your kind of work on the news segment, because as someone who wants to go into broadcasting, you just nail it. And what makes it great is whenever I'm watching, the Friday edition, you're delivering the news, it really seems like you could be someone delivering the news just in like, in like a random city doing the local news. It seems like you could literally be doing that. I think that's what really adds to it and makes it great.
Well, thank you. I actually got an offer to do the sports news at ABC after that job ended. But I wanted to be an actor. I didn't feel like I wanted to be a newscaster. It was fun. It was basically reading jokes that they handed me just before we went on because the writers on Fridays were trying to keep everything really current and up to the minute. So they couldn't write those jokes the night before. They had to wait till that afternoon to write them so they'd catch the latest news to go out live on the show that night. So a lot of times I didn't know what I was saying. I was just reading the cue cards or the sheet of paper in front of me. I just sort of kind of zeroed in on a very self-important delivery, kind of urgent and really important kind of delivery, and it kind of covered me for all the jokes. And then I'd sometimes react to the material. Like the one joke was, I'm just reading it for the first time. Something just died on Highway 44, and I can smell it from here. And then I kind of looked at it and threw it away. I just kind of reacted with the audience. So that was really fun. It was a really easy job, but thank you for feeling it was memorable.
Yes, hey, it certainly was. And what is really cool, I think, is you've talked a little bit about this before, but of course you did the Friday edition on Fridays, and then you had Jane Curtin doing Weekend Update on SNL, and I thought it was super cool to hear that you actually worked with Jane on this improvised musical. I think it was called The Proposition.
Yes, the proposition started in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it was an all improvised musical and dramatic review where these wonderful folks like Jane Curtin and Fred Grandy, who I work with on the Love Boat, and Ray Baker, really talented writer actors, would invent material based on an audience suggestion. And I had studied improv in college and actually taught improv in college. And I was a perfect fit for this show when they needed to replace somebody off Broadway. And Jane and I were in the show together. She was in it a lot longer than I was. And I think we both auditioned for Saturday Night Live around the same time. And she got it. And I thought to myself, well, God, I'm so glad for Jane. She's so good. But I should have a job like that. And then 5 years later, I did. The Friday, well, 4 years later, I auditioned for Fridays and got that. And it was like, well, I guess I was supposed to do a job like that. And I did my best not to do it like Jane. I just tried to be myself and give it my own sort of incarnation. And it was fun. It was really fun. But because I was doing the news, and I think Jane might have had this issue too, they didn't put me in the sketches so much. I never got to really develop other characters that I wanted to play because I had the news and they were trying to be fair to the whole cast. So it was frustrating in some ways.
Yeah, but I will say this, no, for my money, I think the news segment is the best part of Fridays, and and that's all you. So
Oh, thank you. Well, it was me, and then sometimes Larry David would be my journalist, and sometimes Bruce Mahler would be my journalist, or some other guest star would also sit at the desk with me and read a story as if they were a reporter, adding to the roster of news stories. So yeah, it was fun. They did a lot with it.
yeah, yes, absolutely. Now because you were on Fridays, I thought this was really cool. You got to take part in Battle of the Network Stars. And there's a great clip on YouTube where you send Tom Selleck into a dunk tank, and I think that's pretty awesome.
Yes, I did it twice. It was really a great sense of victory because he was taunting me, calling me, a weakling and making fun of me. And so when I dunked him twice, it was a real sense of victory.
Yeah, yes,
We all got we all
absolutely.
got free outfits. I think it was Nike or Reebok or somebody. They bought us all free outfits, so that was nice too. When you don't need the money as an actor because you're working, that's when they want to put all their clothes on you and have you do free advertising for them. So it's just kind of ironic to suddenly have all this free athletic garb that I could have paid for at that point.
Let's talk about your amazing book, Odd Woman Out. Let's talk about this. So, yeah,
Oh,
so
I
you had
just happen to have one right here. Odd Woman Out.
there it is. So, in case anyone wants to, anyone wants to buy this, where for oh yeah, first off, so where can people buy the book? If they're
Anywhere online books are sold. Google, Apple, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, it's everywhere. And the audiobook is everywhere too. There are different price breaks for it. So you might get it cheaper if you do a search on Google to find it, but it's pretty omnipresent. The ebook and I perform the audiobook and the paperback are pretty readily available. And whenever I do an autograph show, like I'm doing one in Pasadena in a couple weeks, I sell the books autographed and I get lots of new fans, young fans like you who want to read it. So it's it's kind of great. It's been out over a year now and it's still selling pretty well. It's funny, it's sad, it's hopeful, and kind of gives the psyche life of an actor struggling to find identity as a human being while I'm behaving like other characters most of the time.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Didn't
yeah.
know who I was really. When I played the newscaster on Fridays and had my name on the screen, and that character became popular, I thought, I guess I'll be this character the rest of my life. Articulate, kind of intelligent. Of course, I didn't have writers writing for me, but in real life, I became that character, and that's why I'm talking to you now.
Yeah.
That
It's
character.
Yeah, it's it was as I've kind of been, and I've been listening to the book version as I've been listening to it, it's a very personal book, it's very personal and it's not something and I'll really want to commend you on this. The writing, it's very vivid. It's there's so much detail in it. And and I'll say this, you make me feel like I'm right there with you experiencing the different stories, which I think is, makes you feel like I'm right there, which is, I
That's
wanted to
great.
commend you on that.
Oh, thank you. That is one of the highest compliments I could ever get. Um, to feel like you're in the room with me. So wonderful. Thank you. It's a good 8 hour listen if you're driving anywhere, for 8 hours or to and from somewhere for 4 hours. It's a really entertaining companion.
Yes, 100%. Now I read that you had kind of performed, a lot of these stories on stage before. So just what happened, that made you want to publish the stories in book form?
Well, I was doing this one woman musical called Odd Woman Out. I wrote all the songs and I was performing it. I was commissioned by the Joshua Tree Comedy Festival in California to open their comedy weekend. And at the opening night, there was a literary agent, and she said to me, You know, this is a book. You really need to write this book. It's so much the inside of a woman's head, going through her life as an artist and as a lover and trying to learn how to find a mate. She said, it really take out the songs and just write it as a book. So she kind of mentored me through that process. And the book was ready to go right at the start of pandemic. So um, I did most of my book promotions on Zoom and on Skype and on the radio because I couldn't travel anywhere to do book readings or do a book tour. But in a way, it was kind of effective. Sometimes I'd do a Zoom in North Carolina and like 50 people would be on who I wouldn't have met, but the person that held the Zoom introduced their friends to me. In New Haven, where I'm from, they had a Zoom for me at Yale. Um, so I got a lot of kind of coverage being on Zoom. It was really kind of remarkable and really kicked the book off well.
Yeah, and now the book took around a year to finish. So what was kind of that writing process like? Deciding on what different deciding on like maybe what different stories to include, the order of things, and then, having to edit it, just kind of all that stuff.
Um, I had an editor, a New York editor, and advised me on the order, and she was quite right that I should start at age 50, where I'm really feeling lonely and my career is slowing down, and I'm wondering what my purpose is, and then reflect back on how I got myself so isolated, how I got myself into this predicament. And that's when I could reflect back and look at my younger days, my family, my mistakes. Um, the book goes pretty chronologically to a happy ending. It does take a couple breaks for the Me Too movement, which was happening contemporarily. 2017 is when the Harvey Weinstein scandals began to erupt, and so the Me Too movement, in a way, helped me promote the book because I have a lot of stories about run-ins with famous men in the book, and my shock at being sort of victimized by men, not quite so seriously as other scandalous stories we've heard about, but I came right up against, oh, I'm just a thing. I am still just a thing. So that was an interesting topic of conversation for a lot of podcasts and talk shows that I did during that period.
Yes, absolutely. Now,
Also, it takes a while for a book to come out. You know, when publishers pick it up,
hmm,
it's not done the next day. I mean, they have to set the font, the page size, the design to design the cover. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not just an instant print. It's a process.
yes, it absolutely is. No, no, I will say this, I really do like the cover. I like the color and everything, and kind of what was it like kind of like coming up with the cover of the book?
Well, there was a lot of trial and error. Um, I knew I wanted it to be the title was going to be about exposing myself in stories. And so it seemed that a woman in a trench coat, because the first story I tell when I'm 50 is going to the hustler store in a trench coat to buy some things. So it just seemed the right cover. We tried a lot of different covers like New York City, television studios, and that just seemed generally to cover the whole topic of a woman coming out with the truth about her inner thoughts and her neuroses and her successes.
The whole Larry Flint story was really that was very interesting to hear about because I had a class last semester and we were learning about like his court case against Jerry Falwell and stuff and kind of learning about that. So when I turn on the book and then I hear that I'm like, oh my gosh, it reminded me of class.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting time. Freedom of speech, freedom of print, and all that. We're really in the chaos of that right now, where lies and deceit are, as long as they're sensationalistically interesting, they get published. And AI, unfortunately, is absorbing all the false information with the true information. So AI is kind of a mess right now. I don't think you can really rely on it for factual overviews and answers. Maybe the most simplistic of things, but you can't really call the AI resources and be certain you're getting a true picture. So it's going to be it's the Wild West right now, until they really get it governed.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Hopefully we can get some, get some regulations on that stuff because I mean it's only getting, like I said earlier, it feels like it's only getting crazier by the day.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And what it might do to journalism is kind of really scary. If AI can take facts off the internet and write a coherent piece, it really jeopardizes your career. So you've got to get your individuality and your personality into your style of writing so that nobody can replicate it. So it can't be fed to an artificial intelligence organism.
Yes, 100%. We've kind of been, we've been having like those conversations lately and stuff. And it's really, no, it's a really interesting time. It's like you're really having to kind of think ahead to stuff because you don't know where we'll be even in just like 5 years with this stuff.
You're absolutely right. So I wish you very good luck in your career.
Yeah, yeah, yes. Well, thank you. I mean, I do appreciate that. It's interesting. It's crazy times for sure. Now, what's cool is that you've been writing, ever since you were little. I read that you were writing plays, different essays. What sort of first off attracted you to writing, and then kind of throughout your writing experiences, what do you find most just enjoyable about writing?
Well, I'm a creativity addict. I'm a compulsive creative. If I am not creating, I'm ingesting creations. I don't know what to do with my brain, frankly, if I'm not creating. So when I was a little girl, I actually thought I was going to be a writer. And I had a poem published in fourth grade in the New Haven Register, which was our big local paper when I was a kid. And I was on a writing track. And so I wrote a play called The Queen's New Dress, which was about the queen trying to find the right prince for her princess daughter. And she asked all the young men who sought the princess's hand to create a dress, a beautiful dress for her daughter. And so richer men sent to for silks and brocades and beautiful ornate patterns. And then this one young man who was poor but a good boy and really true, uh, created a dress out of cobwebs and dew stained green from the grass in the morning. And he created this beautiful gossamer gown, and he won the princess's hand and half the kingdom. And so when it came time to do that play, they put it on in fourth grade, and at some of the other schools in the New Haven area. I didn't get the part of the princess or the queen. I was the narrator. And then I was like really mad. It was like, I didn't even get a part in the main part in the thing I wrote. So that's when I decided to be an actress too, because I wanted to make sure I was cast in the things that I was writing. So I've had this double kind of interest for quite a while, and sometimes one aspect, the acting is going really well, during which time I don't have time to write, and sometimes the writing is going really well, and then I have to drop everything when I get a part. So I've always had this sort of double track. And then I also teach. I teach charisma. A lot of people come to me online, and I give them charisma coaching, and I have a different approach for everybody I work with. There's no cookie cutter corporate approach. Some people are shy, some people are extroverted, and they all have to be kind of put into their best possible body English and voice projection and emotional connectivity to be the best spokespersons for themselves. So there's a different approach for everyone, and I work with all kinds of people. Right now, a guy who's a surfing instructor wants to put a promotional video together, and he's a real laid back California guy, like says a lot of and like, and doesn't really look at the camera, kind of like. So we have to work on making him a spokesperson for his surfing philosophy. So it's a very interesting line of work. I get to meet politicians, religious people, um, Christian journalists. I did a show with a guy who was very shy, but he wanted to host his own show about the Latin Mass and the older churches of America, the Roman Gothic styles of churches. And so I met with him online for a while and coached him. And then he brought in an Irish woman from Dublin and had me coach her too. And then I said, "You guys are ready to star in your own show." And they told me their show idea. And I said, "This is a very viable show idea." And so we shot a pilot at Mission San Juan Capistrano, and they flew in from Ireland and Chicago, and we shot a pilot, and it was picked up by EWTN, which is a Christian network. And then we shot another show at the St. Charles Church at Harvard right after the Boston Marathon bombings, when a lot of people were killed. And so a lot of Christians came to Latin Mass that weekend. They had a need for that kind of ritual and tradition. And so, of course, a tragedy like the Boston Marathon killings is great for documentary because it gave the show an intensity and a focus that we might not have had were it not for that tragedy. So the show ran for quite a while on EWTN. I think you can get DVDs of it, but I learned a lot doing it. I didn't know much about the Latin Mass or the beautiful Roman Gothic churches in America, the oldest churches in America. And that was a great adventure in which I wrote, directed, and coached these non-performers into becoming very stellar hosts. And in fact, there's a testimonial on my website, charismatizing.com, where Alex Bagan, who is the star of the show, uh, does a little plug for me about my ability to help him with his own personality and to put a whole show together, which ran for a while. And he was very proud of it because he's a big devotee of the Latin Mass, which the current Pope is not. So he's kind of at loggerheads with the current Pope, but he's been written up in the New York Times about this controversy. And it's just a very, he's a fundamentalist, and that's what he prefers. That's the way his God or his worship comes to him, is through the fundamentalist rituals, the vestments, the whole parade, the priest facing away from the parish, looking toward the altar with them to worship instead of preaching to them as if he is God. So it's a very interesting topic. And I learned a lot doing that show. So I've had a lot of adventures working as an actor, writer, and director and coach. It's taken me a lot of very interesting places and
Yeah.
still does, still does.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's really cool hearing about your coaching and stuff. How did that start for you?
Well, I started teaching improv in college. I think I have it in my book that my acting teacher was an alcoholic and didn't show up for classes that often. So a friend of mine, Donald Wallner, and I started teaching right out of Viola Spolin's Improvisation for the Theater book. And we taught the exercises to our classmates, and then we actually learned to do improv. So I started teaching improv and studying improv in college. And then when I came to New York City, living on the Upper West Side, I started teaching it. And I've taught it ever since. I teach a monthly live class here in Los Angeles now that pandemic's over. But I use the techniques of improvisation in my coaching of each individual student. Everybody's a completely different labyrinth of boundaries and inhibitions or exhibitions. And the improv really helps me adapt to all these different kinds of personalities. I highly recommend improv for you too.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Improv, it's a very, I would say it's a very useful skill, definitely. And,
Yes.
and I mean, and even for me, who wants to go into broadcasting and stuff, and for people for others who want to go into broadcasting, it's very useful because sometimes they'll say in our journalism school, what happens if the teleprompter goes out and stops working? Well, then you got to keep on going. The show goes on, right?
Yeah. Well, I have a dear old friend I went to college with. We were in a lot of plays together. His name is Richard Neer, and he was the voice of WNEW in New York in the 70s and 80s and the voice of the Mets. So he's somebody you might want to interview or speak to, Richard Neer. He lives in Hilton Head, down south right now. But he still has a show, a sports show on the air. And sometimes he'll have call ins, and he'll need to just improvise conversation with the call ins, the questions. So he's used his improvisational skills to very good ends for 50, 60 years now.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, yeah, I would, gosh, as a huge baseball fan, I would love to talk with him. That'd be
I'll
amazing.
I'll put you in touch. I think it's a very good match, you and Richard Neer, because he's very erudite and educational about what you're doing, what you're intending to do.
What would you say, kind of when it comes to your coaching, what is the most rewarding part about it for you?
Well, generally, it's when somebody has a personal success. I worked with this Iranian guy for a number of weeks, just actually 5 or 6 weeks. He got it really fast. I don't have a curriculum. It really depends on how fast people pick up. And he was very shy. Um, his father had been on the spectrum of autism, so his father gave him very little face contact. So this young man was very kind of abbreviated in his behavior. He looked like this when he was talking to me, or he'd look like this, never really made eye contact. So once we kind of loosened him up and got him making eye contact, he started going around looking for the girl of his dreams and started dating. That was his goal. And last I heard, he was doing very, very well. And then I just get success stories from my students, and that's how I know it's working. You can read my testimonials on my website, or I can send you some from people who have had completely different reactions and had different successes from the work that we did together. Like I work with a software IT guy for a long time who wanted to become an entrepreneur but was very shy about pitching. So we worked on giving him an extroverted persona so that he could actually go out into the tech sectors and pitch his ideas. And he's been very effective as a result. So those are the quiet little victories that we have together.
That's awesome. That's really great to hear about, and I think it's great that you've been able to use the experiences and the wisdom that you've gained throughout your career and use it to help others. I really have a lot of respect for that.
Oh, well, it feels good to be of value to people. I'm glad I can still make a contribution in any way I can.
Yes, absolutely. Now my last question here, this is the question I always like ending these interviews off with this question. What would you say is the biggest piece of advice that you have for aspiring actors?
Hmm. These days, I'd say make a film, feature yourself, get a good director, good lighting. Uh, Film is our calling card now. Um, Not just an audition tape, but a film in which you show your personality and then some sections of scenes that you've done. Or if you're a voice actor, put a reel together. Has to be, you have to grab them in under 60 seconds. So a 59-second calling card, either of your voice samples, and I mean stellar, charismatic, best voice samples you can put together, or a film, and that'll be your calling card. Pictures and resumes, we don't really need to carry those anymore. It's all online. So if you can jam into 59 seconds your best work as a dramatic actor, as a comic actor, as a voice actor, as a director, I mean, these are the areas that you can capture in a brief film, in a brief recording. But don't just make a smear of a thing. It has to be really professionally done and get feedback from your support system.